So we are both at home, and you have kids and dogs at home.
Yep.
So we're just going to play this by ear. This is a super casual conversation. My audience are primarily caregivers that are caring for a loved one at home.
Okay.
And they are struggling with needing tools and resources that are going to help them provide the best care for someone. So I wanted to bring you on to just talk a little bit about your background and expertise and your thoughts and just suggestions on things that they could be doing at home. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is always a valuable conversation, but especially now with the added isolation that our communities are facing. I'm Meaghan Walls. I am by training a rehab engineer, which essentially means that I help focus on taking an understanding of physiological systems and the tools that exist kind of all around us and putting them together to solve human access problems. So I work a lot in assistive technology and environmental design. My company is Assistology, founded here in Omaha, and that's really the focus is to help businesses create better products and spaces for their customers and help individuals remove barriers from their life so that they can engage in all of the different activities and environments that make their life fulfilling. And so I've been in the industry doing this for going on 15 years, which is crazy.
Forever.
Yeah, I was born and raised here, but was gone for a while and came back in 2013 and started the company in 2017.
So you have worked with a lot of people, you said one-on-one, just working to help alleviate or make easier those daily activities of daily living. So what are some of the common ones that you find that people are struggling with?
Things centered around the kitchen come up a lot. And sometimes, we take for granted what those activities and engaging in making our own cup of soup, making a meal to sit down and have with a friend or a loved one, or being able to feel confident having that meal and not worrying about spilling our food or drink. So a lot of things in the kitchen environment, but lately it's been a lot more about hobbies of sort. So those things that you have a stroke and you just really miss playing cards with the neighbors, or you're losing your vision, and whether it's cards or reading or different types of activities that require that. And then and I'd say I'll call it controlling the environment, but a lot more smart technology in the home, and in figuring out how to use that to increase opportunities for communication. And
so really the goal is maintaining independence and independence with dignity.
Yes, and independence, with as much, they overlap, but independence with as much autonomy as possible. Like, yes, I can do this task, but I also am able to choose between this activity and this activity. So being able to provide a range of opportunities so that life feels more like their own.
Yeah.
And not dictated by some external force.
Well, and I love how you mentioned the hobbies, because I think that's something that people struggle with as they are aging. And then as a caregiver, helping take care of someone, how do I keep them engaged in the things that they love to do that make them who they are, and have it help them so that they can continue to do those things?
Well, and I think one thing that's really important for individuals working with those families, the caregivers in families that are struggling, or dealing with changing abilities, whether it be from an injury or just age-related decline or disease, is that we often forget about the impact on the caregivers of some of these solutions. And so, yes, creating a more independent way for an individual that they're caring for to engage in mealtime or have a hobby or garden or enjoy, something they used to do. It means a ton to that individual,
Right.
but it also means that the caregiver gets a little bit of a break, which is really, really hard to come by. And so that was one of the, I'm involved in a research study, and that was one of our big questions, because what I get really frustrated by in the industry is that most of the stuff that I'm trying to help individuals with isn't considered medically necessary. So insurance doesn't pay for it. And that could be everything from a cell phone holder on a wheelchair so that they can independently communicate when they're in their wheelchair, to, different tools in the kitchen or adapted tools for gardening or playing cards or, cleaning around the house. And there's so much too much to unpack for this conversation just about why that's an asinine situation. Right. And so we kind of are like, okay, well, how could we make a case for insurance companies to see the value in this? And so we're kind of diving into quality of life is the thing that's not measured. What's the quality of life impact on these assistive technology interventions, both for the individual and for the caregiver? So we've been delving into early phase 1, and COVID has, made it really difficult for us to progress it. But that's our goal, is to eventually we'll be implementing assistive technology interventions at the homes and being able to get a pre and post measure of the quality of life impact for the individual and for the caregiver, and what those tools mean. And then ultimately, in a lot of situations, when you have a family caregiver, then the family gets to feel a little bit more like a family. And that relationship gets to feel not so much 24/7 caregiver recipient. And they get to remember, like, oh, we used to like to sit down and have coffee on the deck in the morning together. So that's a really important outcome of some of these interventions as well.
Well, yeah, you get to go back to being a spouse or a daughter as opposed to that heavy caregiver role. I love that you're doing this research study because it is so variable. What does quality of life mean to you versus me? So, or all of us, right? So I know for some people, if they can watch a Husker game on TV and they're able to eat a hamburger, like they are golden. That for them is the ultimate quality of life. But for others, potentially it is being more mobile and active. But it's just such a broad scale. So I really look forward to hearing the results of that study.
Yeah, me too.
So what are some of the basic tools that people could use, let's say in the kitchen or for the hobbies, that people could investigate purchasing?
Yeah, so a lot of it's thinking about like picking an activity. So if I'm gonna, a lot of the things you'll see in the kitchen are either really to help with limited dexterity or hand usage. So a lot of times they're geared, or you'll see them marketed for someone who's had a stroke or arthritis. But they work for a broad range of situations. So you'll have push button can openers, or there's some things around the stove to stabilize the pots and pans so that you can, stir something on the pan doesn't spin. Or there's a silicone ring called a stay bowlizer, and it's essentially that. So you sit it, a variety of different sizes of bowls will fit in it, but you're thinking, okay, do you like to make scrambled eggs? Do you bake? Do you make salad dressing? And if you only have good functional use of one hand, you can't stir without the bowl like going where, so
Right.
it stabilizes that bowl. So things that stabilize and make those activities safer are really common. There's one that I like that's not in an assistive technology catalog, and that's part of the beauty of assistive technology is it's just anything that you use to make the activity easier. And a lot of things will just kind of be sitting around, or you'll find them in some other category, but they're technically called portion control baskets.
Okay.
But they're little strainers that will sit on the lip of a big pot, and then you can boil things right in those, whether it's potatoes or vegetables or pasta, and then you strain them right there over the water. So you don't have to transport this big boiling pot of water, which isn't safe in a lot of situations. So it's little things like that in the kitchen. Card holders and adapted gardening tools are also very of interest a lot. And I've just been doing a lot with some of the like Alexa or Google devices.
Oh yeah.
And for controlling lights or thermostat, but you can make phone calls through them. And I mean, it's, so you can do some communication stuff, but there's just also a lot of other features, especially on the ones with screens, that you can do. And in the kitchen as well is a lot of low vision. So you're going to see a lot of things that either talk or have really high contrast. And this can work for a lot of, it helps with vision if someone's vision is declining, but also if they're having some cognitive decline, if you can color code things. So if they really like to cook or they really liked to bake, they're experiencing some cognitive decline, you're trying to figure out how to help them engage and follow recipes when things maybe don't mean the same to them as they used to. So maybe, a quarter cup of butter doesn't mean anything, but 1 scoop of red is easier for them to understand.
When you're talking about like the other kitchen things like the no skid thing for the bowl, I am also picturing a mom who has the phone tucked in her head and a baby on her hip, because I spent a lot of years in that space trying to cook dinner and struggling. So some of the things that I'm hearing you talk about are things that would really, it's not an age related per se benefit. It's like anybody can use this to their advantage.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I was running around the kitchen doing like 15 different things yesterday with both kids calling my name. And, it's like this fell off because it was a mess. But if I had some things that just like held some stuff better, it would have been nice. And when you mentioned kind of mobility versus some of the other potential challenges that older adults may face. Part of the getting set up with like some smart technology that's not nearly as scary as people seem to think it is. Like once it's set up, it works pretty well, and that's part of what I do is I get it set up.
Yes.
But you think about, I've done the light bulbs that have been really a game changer in a few different situations, where by voice they can turn lights on and off.
Wow.
Whether through a smart light bulb or the plug that's controlling the lamp. And, whether that's, all right, I'm going to get tucked in bed and I want to read, but I don't have the mobility to then reach and turn off a lamp, or
right.
And now I can do it. I mean, it's the 2020 version of the clap on,
oh my gosh, that is so funny.
I have a woman that I worked with, and she's younger, but she had a high level spinal cord injury, and she lived by herself. She had a PCA, assistant that would come help. The assistant would turn her lamp off when she left at 6 o'clock at night, and it wouldn't be able to go back on until she got there. So for 12 hours, the poor girl was in the dark. So
Literally, yeah.
Literally. So by setting that up, just that alone gave her control of when her room was light and dark. I mean, it can have a really big impact on, and safety wise, if someone's sitting on the couch and they want to dim the lights, but it's not safe for them to stand up and move by themselves, and rather than have to call their caregiver,
right,
they can do it by themselves.
Right.
So that's there's a misnomer that getting a lot of these things in place is expensive. These items, the majority of the items that I work with, I don't know that there's rarely an individual item that's over $100.
So, and even just having one of them in place can have such a great impact.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you just wanted to do lights in a variety of rooms, right? You can get one smart device like on the floor, like a Google Echo or a Google Mini Home or Amazon Echo, and then a series of light bulbs. And I mean, yeah, under $100 for probably 6 light bulbs and the little mini thing, and then you're controlling lights all over.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I didn't even know that was out there. So I am so grateful that we were able to have this conversation, because I think there's a lot of people that are in the same boat.
Yeah. There's so much out there that can help a variety of different situations. And that's where having someone, a lot of the way that I think will be similar to an occupational therapist. So we're just kind of have different goals and outcomes, but we're kind of looking at the same functional task type of things. So if someone's working with an occupational therapist, they could talk to them about wanting to do these things. The challenge there is that the occupational therapist, it won't necessarily fall under something that they can bill for, and they can't prescribe that kind of technology. So they can kind of guide and say a few of these things, but they're not really going to be able in a lot of situations to implement it unless it fits into the therapy plan that they're already trying to rehab through.
So in other words, if you're coming into my home for home health as an OT and we are working on certain things, there are a lot of other things that an OT may be able to give you a heads up that's available, but because they can't bill hourly to Medicare or another insurance company, then maybe they're not going to be able to help you actually get it together and implement it.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, and that's where someone with my kind of training kind of can come into play. It's a really nice partnership with the therapy side of things, because I'm not looking to work in a therapeutic capacity. And so whether someone's done with therapy but has other goals that they can't justify a therapy plan for, they can segue into working with me, or if there are, or the time may overlap, it may happen at the same time. But it's a lot of what do you want to do? Let's figure out what's getting in the way, and then I'm going to help find the tools to bridge that gap so that you can participate where you are right now today, not 6 months down the road when you've gone through therapy and progressed some of those goals, but right now, how can we get you more engaged? And having done this for a number of years, I also understand that a lot of the things that will solve that problem aren't in a catalog. And so that's when I talk to occupational therapy students or emerging AT, assistive technology professionals or people interested in it. That's one of the key things, is when you're working, focus on what you're trying to solve. Right. Don't get it in your head that you have to get it, you know, from this catalog because they have arthritis, or this catalog because they've had a stroke. Like, what is the problem you want to solve? And think about what type of tool would help. And then maybe it's at Home Depot. Maybe it's like a random, you know, baby tool. There's a thing that's marketed for new parents called a door latch cover. And it piece of fabric, rubber bands essentially in the end, and it hooks on both sides of the doors on each doorknob. And it keeps the door from latching. So it's marketed to new parents so that the door doesn't make noise when they open it to check on their kid. But what it does is just make the door a push-pull. So an individual with balance or gait challenges, fatigue, or dexterity, it eliminates having to like just if you think through all of the steps of opening a door, you've got to engage the knob, move out of the way, and then this just makes it a push-pull. So it's marketed to new parents, but it has applications throughout the life, and can kind of remove that barrier. So it's being able to think outside the box in terms of where could I look for something that solves this, that helps make it safer, make it a more independent environment, and kind of just all around kind of meet those needs. And so that's kind of the process, is very individualized into what that person or that family needs, and setting those expectations from the get-go.
So really, as a caregiver, if I have my top 3 to 5 things that every day they're just constant, frustrating for me, frustrating for them, there's obviously a lot of options that are out there that are being marketed for other reasons that could potentially help me with what I'm trying to do, taking care of somebody.
Yeah, and I think that another key in a successful kind of intervention with these types of tools is a matter of expectation and priority. And it may be that the caregiver has these 5 priority areas and the individual has these 5, and there's only 2 that overlap. And so that's where you start, right? So you start there, because if the individual isn't motivated or doesn't care about getting more independence in that, they're gonna have zero engagement and interest, and then actually frustration is just gonna increase.
Right.
Why don't you use that? Well, I don't want to use it. I told you I didn't want to use it. Well, I want you to use it. So that's a really important part of the conversation too, is making sure that there's an understanding of where it's going and what we're trying to do.
Having some common ground.
Yeah.
Well, how would people get a hold of you?
I'm available in so many different ways.
Some of our audience is local to the Omaha metro area, and then obviously this is being pushed out to YouTube, so anyone in the nation.
So you can call or text at 402-500-0667. Email all the time. It's assistologyomaha@gmail.com. Hopefully maybe when you post it up, you can put those in, because it's kind of long.
Yes.
And then assistologyomaha.com is my website. And if you go to the individual tab, there's a link to some of the individual cases that I've worked, so people can kind of read through some of those solutions have looked like for individuals in a variety of ways. There's also a contact link on the website. So if you just want to send them, if you're on the website and then you just want to send a message through, I'm happy to answer questions or share resources. I've got some blogs on there that I think some families have found helpful on some of a lot around the kitchen and recreation. There's some examples on there too.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was fun.
Thank you.
You gave so many golden nuggets, so I know that you've helped somebody just through this conversation.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. All right.
Good talking with you.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.